Hey everybody, it's time for Herb ID class. So I've got 5 plants to show you today, the first 5 on the list. So let's get started. The first one on the list is Achillea millefolium. There's several common names for this: milfoil, thousand leaf, things like that. But you can see how very, very finely divided the leaf is. And I wish you could smell it, but it's very aromatic as well. Here's an old bloom stem. These bloom late spring, early summer. It's a corimb, and I'll show you some pictures of that. Is held up over the foliage, perhaps this tall. These are considered kind of weedy. This particular one is a cultivar. Well, here's a dried flower right here. You can kind of see that in the bright sun. But imagine that kind of rounded head. And this one is, I believe, pink colored, if I remember right. I put a tag in here, but I think the tag is gone. But there's an old flower. You can kind of see how tall it is. It looks like it's about probably 18 inches or 20 inches. But this grows by rhizomes and runners. And you can see where they've just started running. This is the original plant, and these are the runners right here where my thumb is, and here's some as well. So these will kind of run and fill in, and honestly they can become kind of weedy. They do like a dry soil. They do not like a lot of fertilizer. I have these are here at the college, and I've played around with them at home, but I like to fertilize stuff at my house, and they haven't responded well to heavy fertilization. So, and I've got them in a really rich potting soil. This is kind of enriched soil. It's all potting soil here. So, but it seems to be happy. It looks like it's bloomed and kind of fleshed out with new growth, probably with some of the early fall rains we've had. But that is Achillea millefolium. The next plant is not this one, it's this one. This is Acorus, gramineus, Ogon. Ogon is the cultivar name, and this is actually the shorter, the dwarfer version. This kind of looks like variegated liriampe a little bit, but the leaves are narrower, and it's got kind of a green and gold variegation rather than a green and white variegation. But this plant's hardy to zone 9, and we're in zone 8B right here. It does have a flower, and it's not a very noticeable flower. Now the textbooks will call it a conspicuous flower, which just means showy. So the flower, and I don't see spiderweb. I don't see any remnants of flowers, but it's a little spadix. It's just kind of a dull green, blunt spike, I guess. That's kind of hidden down in the foliage a little bit. These really like wet conditions. These will actually grow in a little bit of submerged water, shallow, standing water or slow moving water. But the reason I chose these is because this area stays wet, because my air conditioner is back there, both of them actually, and the condensation line keeps this area really saturated, and what was here from the previous owner wasn't doing very well. So I planted 6 plants. Let me back up a little bit. I don't know if you can tell, but this area is maybe 6 feet across and maybe 3 feet wide at the widest. And in 5 years, these 6 plants have totally dominated this area. And you can, I don't know if you can tell on camera, but underneath this hibiscus, and this is a hibiscus moschitos, which blooms gloriously during the summer. There are probably 7 or 8 inch flowers that are plum colored. It's really pretty against that gray fence back there. Anyway, down in the shade underneath the hibiscus, the plants are taller, and that's just a natural response to the shade. But I don't know if you can tell how thick these things are. They're just really, really dense and thick. They're kind of stoloniferous, and they've come right up to the concrete, and they're beginning to run out of room. In fact, they have run out of room, and in some places are actually beginning to grow over the concrete. So I'm probably going to try to divide these, dig and probably put back 6 or 8 plants sometime during the winter. So if anybody wants any, let me know. But it'll tolerate a lot of shade. These get a lot of sun, and you can tell I'm kind of in the afternoon sun right now. And so they get a lot of reflected heat off of this pavement. And except for one little spot, they do pretty well. And I think it's because of all the water that is flowing through here during the summer as the air conditioners are running and keeping this area wet. This hibiscus likes wet conditions as well. That's another reason I chose both of these plants, was because of that. Let me think here. Common name is sweet flag or grassy leaved sweet flag. And that's a fairly common. There's other things called flags. There's an iris that we'll look at later called a flag iris. So anyway, that's Acorus, gramineus, Ogon. Next on the list is Agave, americana or americana. This, believe it or not, is in the asparagus family, Asparagaceae. Believe it or not. Sometimes this is called a century plant, and there's several other species. In fact, you can make out one right there. A little bit different species. But these are propagated by offsets. You see some of the offsets here. There's like 1, 2, 3 at least or so. And if you like getting stuck with these spines, then feel free to help yourself, but they are tough to get off. One of the common names for Agave americana is century plant, and the legend goes that they only flower once a century, and that's not really true. I mean, it might be 5 to 10 years, but when they do flower, a flower spike comes out of the center of the plant, out of this basal rosette of leaves, and will grow, gosh, 8, 10, 12 feet tall, and it will be 2.5 to 3 inches around or so. It'll look like a thick tree trunk. And once it flowers, this mother plant dies. This thing just got me. And then it'll really go to town putting these offsets on. So and it takes about a year for all that to happen. It'll bloom, the bloom fades, and then the mother plant dies away. And then as it fades, the space is kind of filled in with these offsets. But that is Agave americana. This is the famous aloe vera, the one that's used for medicinal purposes. This one I've had outdoors all summer, and it's done rather well. But it's tropical. It's only hardy to zone 10, which is central Florida and farther south. So it's got to be brought in for the winter, and I'm going to have to take it out of this decorative pot and put it in something more manageable. But this is in the Asphodielaceae family, and this is a pretty mature size. They'll actually get a little bigger. But, and I've seen them at Atlanta Botanical Gardens that were quite a bit bigger, but they're not very attractive when they get real stemmy. This basal stem will grow, and it just is like a tree trunk, and these leaves get damaged and they end up getting cut off. So this is in pretty good shape. Now you can see how we've got offsets coming up here. These are the pups, the babies, the daughter plants, whatever you want to call it. And I like a really clean plant, so when I depot this, I'm going to remove these offsets and pot them up or discard them, and that's okay. It's a plant. It's okay. And just for fun, I've got this Dichondra Silver Falls in here underplanted. And by the way, this started out as the classic thriller, filler, spiller. My thrillers haven't done too well. I'll show you that in a second. But this Dichondra Silver Falls is pretty vigorous. You can kind of see this side of it where it's kind of gotten thick, and I need to thin it out, clean it up, and make it look a little bit more presentable. The filler has been this sedum that I picked up at Growers Outlet in Lawrenceville, and it didn't have a tag, but it's really dark purple, and I love the coarse texture. It does have a little bloom on it, but it hasn't fared well, and I don't know if it's because I'm kind of a little fertilizer happy. Anyway, that's aloe vera. It's synonymous with Aloe barbadensis, and it's a little different from a lot of the aloes that we have in our greenhouse here at the college. And I'm not exactly sure what the differences are, but it's clearly a different species. But anyway, we're going to count them both as aloe vera, and that's that one. This is Ajuga reptans. It's in the Lamiaceae family. This is a low-growing ground cover, mostly for shade. It'll tolerate some sun, but in the here in the shade, it kind of maintains some purple foliage, the newer foliage, and then as it ages, it turns to green. This kind of runs by runners. I'll try to pull some up here. Kind of like strawberries. The plants started back here, and they've kind of crept outward this way, and I can't quite see if I can reveal it here. There's a stolon right there that's coming off of this plant where my forefinger is, and it's creating this whole rosette right here. Nice big fluffy plant. These like well-drained soil, and in the spring they have these blue spikes of blue, or spikes of blue flowers, I should say, and real attractive, mostly for shade. They don't like heavy compacted clay, but they do like a little bit of shade, particularly in the afternoon in the south. But a good old-fashioned ground cover. I prefer not to use this next to a turf area, because they will creep into the turf and they become a weed. It's probably why it's called bugleweed. But as you can see, it's pretty thick. It almost can exclude a lot of the weeds that are trying to grow in here. This ceodes, and that looks like a what you call it? Having a senior moment. But anyway, Ajuga reptans bugleweed.